Let's start off this morning with little massaging exercise or tapping exercise, however you think of it. It's just rubbing your hands together, your fingers warm up a little bit, and then tapping lightly over your face. Just let your jaw loosen a little bit. And then work up over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. Your arm. Bring the muscles vibrate a little bit as you tap them. The other side. Shoulder first of all, and then your arm. I generally go down the inside of my arm and up the outside. But these are not sort of hard set routines. Come around your back, lower part of your back. Just trying to leave your hips a little bit loose again, just feeling vibrations of muscles in the area. Looking down towards your hips and around your hips. And your legs. Knees just a little bit bent. And up. Very gently on your belly. Into the upper part. A nice little routine just to bring your attention into your body to get the energy flowing a little bit, and then standing. So you want to have your feet directly below your hips, hip width apart, too close together, pointing forwards as much as possible. Weight a little bit forwards. And when we do that, when we bring our weight a bit forwards, we get this sort of sense that we're tilting forwards. And try and just think about how your body is responding to that. A very common response is to pull our shoulders back to sort of try and boost ourselves into an upright position. Much better if you can just let your hips drop back a little bit and get this feeling of releasing down through your lower back, hips, buttocks, knees. Things will just settle in, and then trying to maintain this position, turning gently in the center part of your body. So hips and waist, not a big movement. This area, the center of the body, is sometimes described as being like the hub of a wheel. And if you think about, say, a bicycle wheel with its spokes, then what you're going to get is a little bit of movement of the spokes that are attached to the hub, but more movement of the same spoke when it's attached to the rim. So there's a natural, almost mathematical progression in the range of the movement without you having to do anything extra. And this is a good example of a principle that we always look to try and fulfill in these arts. It's summed up in some of the ancient writings in Tai Chi that 4 ounces will move 1,000 pounds. And essentially what we're trying to do is to make sure that the effort we put in is appropriate effort, not straining, not forcing the movement, following the path of least resistance. So just letting your arms hang down, feeling the weight of your arms hang from your shoulders, just noting the way that your arms follow the movement. And at this point, no resistance to the movement is the idea. Those hips, shoulders, back, just beginning to loosen off a little bit. The big muscles in those areas are ones that sometimes we might want to just try and very actively, very deliberately relax them, so that other parts of your body start to engage. Skeletal muscle, fascia, tendon, ligament all start to have a place in the movement. The, the effort is spread more evenly through your body. You can then start to apply the image of moving through water, or some people like to think of the air being thicker than the water. If we practice this, it brings about a change in tone of the movement. Rather than the arms just flopping around, that we have to put a little bit of substance into them. We have to maintain a shape, a pathway. But because the image of being in water, we can't do that by stiffening up in those muscles that we've already begun to release, muscles and joints. I'm using muscles really as a first stage of awareness. These things should apply all the way through the body. So gradually we start to get a movement that has a bit more substance, feels a little bit perhaps denser is the correct word. As always, in these opening exercises, which are fairly simple, we're trying to just remind ourselves or to establish for the first time certain principles that we want to flavor the whole art. So the dropping back at the hips that I mentioned earlier leads us to sense of our weight, our center of gravity dropping, rooting down in Tai Chi terms. That rooting down offers us more stability. It also means that there's less need for carrying excess weight in the upper part of the body, stronger on the legs, of course. As we lose some of that tightness and stiffness, we get a sense of more space in the body for that looser movement. And as we apply an image like moving through water, we don't want to lose that space. And this leads us to a sense of the dynamic of the movement, the flow, the energy, working without restriction. Raise your arms in this one. So holding your arms out, just under shoulder height, slightly in front. Giving a little bit more definition to the movements of the arms without actually causing them to stiffen up. Again, remembering that image of moving through water. And learning, yeah. Put one foot in front, maintaining the width of your step, about the same length in step to begin with. And now bringing our legs a bit more actively into the movement, with a very gentle push from the ground. At least that's how we think of it initially. In time, as your legs condition will begin to appreciate that it's more of a kind of springy, bouncy movement. Once again, the center of your body turning. So moving from the ground. So awareness of how we're moving, of our posture, is crucial in this art. If we move from the ground, we have a better chance of retaining the root, retaining the stability and the alignment of our body than if we were leading with our shoulders. And then the other foot forwards. So these are basic principles that we can use the initial exercises to either become aware of for the first time or for people with more experience to remind ourselves of what we're trying to develop in the art. Shake. It's sometimes said that everything you need to know about Tai Chi is there in your first ever class. It's just the rest of the time is actually realizing that. And at, at, at the start, we established foundational principles, but they're not just foundational principles. In a way, they're the things that we are actually practicing to try and develop, to try and sustain in our life. Standing in the parallel stance and just begin to let your weight rock forwards and backwards. I'll come a bit closer to the camera. The pivot point here should be your ankles. So try not to sort of just do this with your shoulders or something, but just letting your body sway gently to and fro, like a tree, just blowing it in a gentle wind. I can demonstrate with this. You imagine this pole going up through the middle of my body. You see how my body's aligned with it. And as I move, it's just this little bit of like movement there. If I go too far, that's what's going to happen. So moderate the movement a little bit. You want to go roughly from the ball of each foot to the front part of your heel. And then again, using the pole, if I could, it's obviously a theoretical thing in a way, but in theory, there's a position that I could leave the pole in and I could just walk away from it and that wouldn't happen. In practice, it's a lot more difficult. But if I were to get, say, some guy ropes that you pitch a tent with and attach them to the pole, then they too could become part of this. And so we think of our skeleton as being like the pole, like the frame of the tent, and certain tendons, ligaments, muscles as being like the guy ropes and the skin of the tent. Once again, we can build up a picture of the body being supported by a range of activities within the body, not relying on, say, for instance, a tightness in our back and our shoulders, or stiffness in our legs, or pulling the belly in, simply to come to an upright position. Looking for that central point then. And as you begin to recognize the feel of your body when it's in line with the pull of gravity, so at that stage, you're not being pulled forward, you're not being pulled back. That takes away some of the need for tightness in your body. You begin to settle into that, noticing sensations in your back, your shoulders, your hips, wherever. And then, once again, just trying to bring your weight a little bit forwards and using this releasing feeling, dropping back in your hips to return to that feeling. We have a combination here of a stance that offers the possibility of being comfortably still, settled, mind and in body. And yes, at the same time, with hardly any effort at all, slight movement forwards and we can take a step. So we have a very energetic posture, but one that encompasses a quality of stillness. Again, this is something that we want to try and cultivate through the exercises. So it gets trickier, obviously, as we start to move. This is what we refer to in Tai Chi as central equilibrium. So now just letting the hips drop back a little bit more. And then the knees start to hurt, pushing up. As you do this, your pelvis is allowed to adjust slightly. And that becomes a crucial action in the maintenance and cultivation of that central equilibrium. Sinking down, pushing up gently. Nice smooth movement, allowing gravity to pull down into the ground. And then feeling that response from your legs. I mentioned earlier the development, the springiness in our legs. Bring the hands around as though you're cradling the ball. And as you push up, expansion in the body, pushing your elbows out. Turn your hands over as though they're draped over the ball, sinking down so you push the ball down. Turn your hands and pushing it. The exercise routine down. Maintaining, if you can, that image of moving through water, but also, in a sense, moving like water, very fluid feeling within the body, not forcing anything. Breathing just comfortably, however it comes to you. Not straining for a breathing pattern or breathing method, unless you've got some experience and you're comfortable with a particular way of breathing, in which case you can apply that. Not holding the breath. This exercise is simply called rooting down. And one of the things we can realize from it is that the rooting down isn't just about providing us with that stability that I mentioned earlier, but also is the first part of what is really a twofold process: sinking down, loading the legs, sometimes referred to, and then feeling the push back up. So sinking down, yielding to the pull of gravity, allowing gravity to pull us down, creates the potential for an upward move. Like bouncing the ball has to drop down first in order to do that. So that sense of a rising movement, a rising energy, requires the rooting down as the starting. Next exercise. So at this stage, sinking down, turning your hands so fingers face outwards. Let the expansion of your body, push your arms away. This is the exercise of the wild goose. And once again, an image here perhaps that offers some kind of quality, some kind of tone in the movement. Hands slightly in front of your body. So if you pull your hands back, you start to tighten the chest. The image of the bird in flight doesn't mean much to you. Maybe just imagine waving a feather up and down. One more time. And then your hands drop down, cross in front of your belly, pushing up. Drawing your arms around. It's called parting the clouds. Not overextending. At the top of the movement, my arms are still bent a little bit. So we again refer back to that feeling of spaciousness within the body. And then elbows bend a little bit, just curling your arms under and going back to the first exercise and doing a little sequence of three. Don't rush the changeover. Well, the wild goose, it's not the end of the world if you get it in the wrong order. trying to maintain this little sequence and gradually letting your attention sink deeper into your body. So here, as you do the first exercise, just feeling that gentle expansion and contraction here in the center of the body. As you start the wild goose, we feel it in the same area, but it spreads up towards the solar plexus. And then belly and solar plexus and up into your chest. So we're aware not only of the external movement, but of the resonances, the echoes of that movement within the body. Again, as we get more experience with this, there's a switch, in a sense, in the order of our attention. We tend to move more from the inside out than the outside in. It's not to ignore the outside movements, but to feel how movements within the body build up. Once again, taking the emphasis away from small parts of the body and building a sense of our whole body in movement, in one movement. Again, that spreads the effort. One more round. Let your hands drop down and just loosen off by swinging your arms around, going turning from the center. And then, so as we become more familiar with the movements and we repeat sequences, we repeat sets of movements over and over again. It's like listening to a piece of music or reading a poem or something like that. As you get more used to it, more familiar, we discover nuances, and these nuances are generally within the body. And so, as I say, there's this switch from a movement that we could argue is externally driven. We move our legs, we move our arms, we feel a response within the body to bring in a sense of intentionality to those responses. And our bodies become very sensitive to intention. This is where things like imagery can become so important, alongside awareness, memory, and so on and so forth. These will all feed in to our intentionality. And we find that we bring body and mind together far more, and that this is not mind over matter, but that in that interaction, our minds become much more influential. And this is part of the ongoing journey of these arts to, with all the movements, and I would say particularly to people who are more experienced, don't take any movement for granted. Quite often I find that a movement I've been doing for decades in some cases can take on a new aspect if I can keep an open mind and not get into a this is how it's done mode. There's a sense of curiosity is useful. So from the standing posture, once again, just sinking down and pushing up, body expanding and contracting. Sometimes you feel almost a sense of energy building from the ground. As it comes into the upper part of our body, we feel the expansion and the contraction there. And it's quite often these small changes within the body, these small patterns that I drew reference to a few moments ago, that are the ones most likely to be influenced by our intentions. This time, sinking down and bringing your attention to one side of your body. And as you push up, your elbow gets pushed out, draws your fingers up at the top of the movement, wind around and pull down like you're plucking something off a tree. Now, switch your attention to the opposite side, same thing, extending out and going back. Once again, I'm not stretching, I'm not going to the full capacity. Switch sides again. Don't hurry the change over. If you do find yourself rushing, add a third point of awareness, which is the center of your body, and then move to the other side. But essentially, we're using our intentionality to switch the actual movement from one side of the body to another. This is called Dragon Plucks the Stars. Trying to feel that extension all the way up through your body and the contraction likewise. Almost like there was an elastic band from your foot up through your hip, through the side of your body, to your shoulder and up into your fingers, which is extended out and then slowly contracts. Thing on the other side. If I suggest an image and it isn't useful to you, don't feel that you've somehow failed. It may become more apparent later, or it might not be useful. We use a variety of images for that reason, finding the right view, as it were, of movement. And sometimes that's suggested a new image, a new view can offer a different insight into a movement. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. One more time on each side. And just stand. Shake out. The next two movements don't involve a distinct downward and upward movement in our hips. This is what we've been doing so far. Hips are pulled down by gravity and then pushed up by our legs. And this creates this pattern of movement within the body. A bit more subtly now, just trying to maintain the stance with our hips just dropping back. This should allow a free passage through your body, downward with the pull of gravity and upward. The downward movement leading to that rising, expanding movement coming up through your body. And without the downward movement, there could be no upward movement. Again, like a ball bouncing. And so even if we're not actively moving up and down, we can still start to get a sense with this two-way dynamic within the body. And this time, bringing your hands to your sides to rest just next to your hips, slightly touch the side of your hips. It could be the inside of your hand or your arm. Don't put your elbows too far back. From here, just feeling the upward movement lengthening through your back as though you're pressing up against a low ceiling, and then back down. Making a particular point to take the time to bring your hands back, lightly touch your hips. Feel your hands being pushed up again, and this time push out sideways, broadening of your back and back. Always giving yourself time and space. Bring your attention back to the area between hips and waist. And I described it as being like the hub of the wheel. From here that we feel that expansion outwards, up to the sides and downwards with the rooting down. And here that the contraction takes us back to. So our attention is being gently trained to settle into that central area and from there down into the ground. And as it does, there's just this little sense of a moment of settling. A moment I sometimes describe as being like a comma in a sentence, in which, again, to quote the early writings associated with Tai Chi, urge to seek the stillness within the movement. If we lose it, which we probably do, the transition of the movement, we can just gently touch it again with that physical location. This time, as you push out, you turn in the center. So the turning guides the direction of your then coming back. Turning in the other direction. This is called pushing in 4 directions. And then pushing out to the sides. Again, by an image like moving through water, or again, if you imagine that elastic band through your body. That's quite an interesting image because we're looking for a quality of elasticity in all the soft tissue of the body. Muscles, so mobilizing muscles, skeletal muscle, tendons, ligaments, fascia, developing this elastic, supple quality. So the image of the elastic band may help you with that. Not turning too far. We don't want to reintroduce that tightening, gripping quality. One more round. Your hands drop down. And then possible just lightly touching the sides at a certain point. And the expansion, again, on one side, pushing your arm out so that it swings out to the side and up. Palm of your hand facing outwards and upwards. And down the center line of your body, past your nose. And try not to strain in your shoulder. But don't think of lifting your arm up, but rather swinging out. And then, once again, turning, and that draws your arm across slightly. Just be careful that in doing that, you haven't added any tension, tightness to your hip or your shoulder. Simply called circling palms. changing sides. Noticing any difference between one side of your body and another. There often is. Sometimes those differences will be in arms and shoulders, but remember, if we can focus on that internal change, imagining expansion through the side of our body, pushing our arm out, we can sometimes kind of bypass those areas of tightness and stiffness. And then, just again, adding the turn. And then tilting the center of the body, in particular the pelvis, forwards and backwards. So not full rotation, but it's a vertical circling, if you like to think of it like that. And noticing how that affects the shoulders and your head, when your hips go back and the pelvis tilts forwards, your head going forwards. When you allow gravity to pull your hips down, that gently draws your head up. This time, drop down just a little. Be very careful with your knees and your back. Then let your hips drop down. And then again. Start letting your arms follow. So once again, the center of your body guiding the movements, particularly in the upper part of your body. This is called rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. And a particular feature of this, I think, a very important aspect, is how when we yield, when we allow gravity to pull our hips down, back, our head comes up very gently. So we start to learn how to maintain that upright position without tightening, without stiffening in our shoulders, our back, our neck. Once again, just retaining that sense of spaciousness and recognizing the huge significance of the center part. Time. And then combining both movements in the center, hands coming in front of your belly, you turn, then push the hips back, swing the hips across, come back to the upright by letting the hips drop down. It's called polishing the table. Back so you can see better how my hips work in there. I am exaggerating this a little bit. Go very carefully here. One more round. And then, especially on this top there. The center of the body has been described classically as being like the banner of an army. And our minds has been like the commander of the army. Think about an old style army with the commander standing on the hill, giving out orders to the band and the banner leading the troops. So there's this interactive quality there. Again, between mind and body, again, huge significance placed on this sense of the center of the body. We're literally moving from the center. I sometimes think of it more modern terms as being like a telephone exchange or one of these internet server locations where information comes in and information goes out. And It might be, you might make a phone call and it goes to a central point and that it's guided out to somebody else and so on and so forth. So the center becomes an increasingly important point of focus. Changing the stance. And once again, put one foot forward. Turn one foot out to a comfortable angle. Step forward with the toes pointing forwards. Roughly square stance. So like you're on the diagonal corners of a square. And once again, transferring your weight forwards and backwards. And once again, thinking about that little moment of settling each time you arrive in one leg. This comma in the sentence, as I like to describe it sometimes. So it's not forwards, backwards, backwards. You go into your front leg, give yourself a moment to settle, you feeling of your center dropping to the ground. Go into your back leg, so again, your center dropping to the ground. And that's when we feel that compression in the leg, which then begins to expand. And we allow it to push the center. Our intention was not to go up and down this time, but to go forwards and backwards. This is a key movement in the whole Tai Chi system because that energy that rises from the ground is once again directed through the center of the body. Also because this weight transfer is a key movement. This is an everyday movement. Every time you move around, you go from your living room to your kitchen, there's a transfer of weight. And so this is essential for our mobility. We can begin to be accurate in this weight transfer. That goes a long way towards our stability and our mobility. So if you can remember where you found that point of settling in that way, when we did this very first exercise, and we found ourselves settling, and then we moved the weight to the boards and to feet. That gives you a location where you want your weight to drop. And if you can do that, then again, you're giving yourself a chance to be far more stable, far more aligned. You won't quite get all your weight into the feet at this point, but now as you go back, gently raise your toes and you'll shift back just a little bit more. When you go forwards, push your back knee forward so your hip drops in back, and then you shift again. I'll show you this again with this pole, measuring this going up through my body. Before we start lifting our toes and our heel, you can see where the pole gets to. When I go forwards, I push my back knee in and I shift a little bit more. And you can see the pole is more or less in line with that part of the foot that I want the weight to go to. Same thing going back here, it comes back. If that pole in the middle of my body, it would be going down through the foot about there. So gradually, more of your weight settles into your foot. You can have the front foot very slightly turned out here. I find that quite helpful. And eventually, your weight almost entirely settling into one leg, and you bring what we call the empty foot in, push out, put the heel down, lower the ball of the foot, gently press into the floor and remove the weight. When you step back, same idea, except the ball of your foot goes down first. You call this planting the foot. That gentle press in really gives us a contact with the ground, like you've just potted something in a plant pot, and you're just gently pressing the earth down around it. Don't hurry this. It's quite tricky because we're trying to get that sense of alignment and rooting down completely through one leg. Check out. So it's a good exercise to practice. If you find that you're wobbling around a bit doing it, I always would suggest, and even if you don't actually, because again, it can be quite interesting, if you support yourself by putting your hand on a wall or something, then actually it gives you a little bit more time just to consider what is going on, to bring your attention and your intention into this process. Now let's try that with the other foot forwards. Transmitting your weight, transferring your weight, noticing any resistance. You may, maybe you're tightening in a knee or something like that. And particularly if you find that if you've got a problem with the knee, you will automatically try to protect it. But we want the weight to go through the knee, down into the ground, not to put pressure on our knee. And this is a principle we want to apply really to the whole body, that where there's an area where there's some kind of blockage, some kind of injury, some kind of problem, one of the things we're trying to do is to generate a sense of movement and energy through that area. And this is where Tai Chi and Qigong have a strong connection to basic theory of Chinese medicine. But now, raising your toes and your heel, once again, taking your time. Referring back, perhaps, if you can, to that earlier feeling that I described as central equilibrium. Trying to maintain that as an intention, not so much a technical thing, but this is how you want to feel. Almost like the commander giving the instruction to the body, find central equilibrium and stepping in. Planting the foot. And then taking a few steps through, forwards or backwards, depending on where you have the room. So I'm putting my toes down in the middle, but I might, if I feel comfortable with this, just raise the knee a little bit. Try and do that. If you try to do that, try and do it without tightening up in your back, or your hips, or indeed your shoulders. Going back, changing direction. So the raising of your leg is actually a very simple rotation in your hip joint. Your hip joint rotates, it pulls your knee up. So it needn't require a tightening. In fact, the tightening would tend to block that movement. That means there's more chance of your pelvis remaining level. So we know that when the pelvis is level, we're more upright, but more stable. We learned that in some of the earlier exercises. Now have your right foot forward, mirror lunges. Start with your weight in your back leg. Push forwards, arms trailing behind until you settle into the front leg when you stop. And then, so you're moving through water. This is called fisherman castanet. This lovely wave-like flow of movement on the ground, up through your body, and finally into your arms and back down into. Moving through the water, moving like water, flow through the body, your back leg into the front of your body, and your front leg into the back of the body. At the moment, your weight is moving forwards and backwards, you're facing forwards, your center's facing forwards, your arms are swinging forwards and backwards. But this time, go into your front foot, and as they swing through, turn to your left. And again, the arms swing out from your body, a little bit like wild goose. Dropping down as you move your weight back, turning the other way. This is called wind blows the willows. Expanding contracting, expanding, and so I'm going into your back foot raise, toes of your front foot, bring the foot in. So just check your posture, plant the foot forwards. It's called dragonfly skin movement. And again, if you feel comfortable with this, you can raise your knee and even rotate your hips so that the inside of your legs is up, like you're kicking a ball up. And then through, bring the foot in, maybe raise. So your foot comes in towards your center. If you find that you're just too wobbly on one leg, I suggest you just keep the toes down for the moment. Something to practice, to work on. Um, when I first started doing that exercise, I spent quite a long time holding on to something, working out how can I bring my leg up without tilting the body. The where would I want the sort of the muscles to contract, to expand? And again, we can bring our awareness, we can bring our intentionality into these movements as a kind of investigation to do that. And holding on to something while I do it so I don't have to contend with gravity, basically. So it's something to gradually do. It's difficult. It's difficult to maintain a one-legged posture when you're moving so slowly. So have your left foot forwards and once again, fisherman cast the net. Try not to stiffen up in your fingers. I'm not trying to lift my arms. There's a natural curve in my arms. Once again, particularly people familiar with this exercise, used to bringing their attention into their bodies. Just noting as your arms swing through, where do you feel the response within your body? Which parts of your body are expanding? Which parts are contracting? And if you did want a bigger movement, those are the parts of the body, those are the movements that we would try and build the movement from. Like if you want to build a wall, you build it brick by brick. So our attention is gradually drawn more and more to these small changes within the body. And then we add the turn. Wind blows the nose. Very important outcome from that internal focusing is a deepening sense of calmness and once again, stillness, calmness, the stillness of the mind, letting your attention be rooted through the center of your body into the ground. We're training our minds, we're training our nervous system to find a way, find a location for that quality of stillness. And then bringing your feet into the rhythm. Don't hurry, settle down first. Bring the foot in. Well, settle down, bring the foot in. Don't rush this. Maybe just raising the leg. Your hips dropping back, seeming to counterbalance the raising of your knee. And then stepping through again, forwards or backwards, dragonfly skims the boot. In the back of your mind, this intention to maintain central equilibrium and all that's involved in that, the rooting down, the alignment of your body with the pull of gravity. And then changing direction. Just seeing to what extent we can maintain these basic principles that we began to look at in that first short section class. And bring the big so that last exercise in particular is quite tricky, but it's a development and cultivation of these internal principles that we come back to again and again. And in this final exercise that we close our sessions with, this is how we learn to recover those principles. The exercise is called Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain. A much revered teacher who was based in the United States, somebody called T.T. Liang, somebody once had somebody comment to him, they was always in such good balance. He denied this. He said, I lose balance all the time. I just get it back all the time. And I think that's a good sort of thought that in this exercise, embracing the tiger could refer to just the way, just our everyday life with all its ups and downs, and returning to the mountain. The mountain can be an image of central equilibrium. It would be lovely if we could maintain all these qualities, the physical qualities, the mental, emotional qualities, the whole time, but we all know that that is a tall order. Life, the tiger, knocks us around sometimes, but we learn to come back. So just sinking down, pushing up. This is the embrace the tiger bit, bringing your hands around as though you're going to hold a ball against your chest, letting your hands come in and then settling back down, returning to the mountain. I find it useful to think about what it is that brings me back to the mountain. It doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, it shouldn't be complicated. Whether that be the mind just settling for a moment, those times of agitation, or our hips dropping to give us that little bit of extra stability. Process of return is a good thing to take away with it. So the image of the mountain, sensation in your hips or your shoulders, what would bring you back when you needed to? I could we recover this sense of the stillness within the mood. One more time. And yes. As always, thank you very much, everybody. Please get in touch if you have any questions. But apart from that, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.